FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is January 17th, 2017. Inauguration 3 days away. 3 quick days. Well, if you watched the lead up to the election, people speaking up against the soon-to-be departed Barack Obama and his abuses as president, extra constitutional activities that he undertook, who he really was. One person who was at the forefront of all of that is director, filmmaker Joel Gilbert. Joel was on the show before. Joel, you really made some solid contributions, so we welcome you back to the show.
Hey, great to be here again. Thank you.
Hey, so dreams from my real father. We could go on and on. Obama was an enigma. I don't believe anything about him. I mean, the whole thing is who he really was, his parents, whatever. I mean, he was a manufactured candidate. The Obama that we would see on TV, in the commercials, all that stuff, just like the Bush before him and the Clinton before him and the Bush 43 HW, they weren't real people. They're creations of the media. They don't exist. They don't have a separate corporeal existence as this character. They're strictly, like Shakespeare says, we're all characters on the stage of life. Well, these were real manufactured characters, unlike Donald Trump, who is himself before the election and now, right? I mean, these people don't exist.
Let me comment. Look, I think Barack Obama has a very strong identity. It's just that he hid it from the public with the help of all the media and the people that didn't want people to know his true agenda. And in my film Dreams from My Real Father a couple of years ago, I created an entire alternate biography kind of based on his book, a takeoff on his book Dreams from My Father. And I showed that Obama's real biological father was not the Kenyan Obama, but was in fact Frank Marshall Davis, the Communist Party member, one of the original black Bolsheviks out of Chicago, who went to Hawaii on orders of the Kremlin, where he acted as a Soviet agent for the Russians. Obama admits that Davis raised him, and in my research I showed not only is Davis the biological father, but became the ideological mentor and radicalized Obama into this anti-white, anti-American communist worldview, such that when Obama went to Occidental, he wrote in his own book, he said, when I was 18, I went to Occidental to study with the Marxist professors. Now, who goes to an exclusive prep school in Hawaii and wants to study Marxism? This is because of the radicalization. So Obama followed in the footsteps of his real father back to Chicago, where his father came from, and became a front man for the radical socialist groups, Acorn, Midwest Academy, worked with terrorist emeritus Bill Ayers. And he had a whole life in the little-known world of American Marxism and socialism, but he followed the advice of Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground terrorists. American socialism in the 60s, early 70s, was looking people in the eye and saying, we want to bring down America. We want to destroy this country. We want to put 50 million Americans in re-education centers. We want America to be divided up and occupied by North Korea, Vietnam, China, and Russia. We want to blow up government buildings and murder policemen. This was their policy, to overthrow a communist revolution. Now, it miserably failed because it was so evil. Nobody followed them. They ended up going to jail. And when they came out of jail at the underground in Chicago in the early 80s, the lesson they taught the young socialists was, look, Marxism and socialism in America has to change a little bit. What you're going to do now is don't tell people your true agenda. Look them in the eye and say you want to help families. You want to help raise their wages. You want to give them free health care. Keep your socialism to yourself. And once you take power, throw your voters under the bus and pursue the radical agenda that nobody voted for. And that's the story of Barack Obama and who he is and where he comes from and how he got into office without anyone knowing his real agenda.
Yeah, it's the Chicago way, huh?
Right. Well, look, the definition of democracy is that you have two competing viewpoints that people can choose between. So the socialists and Obama essentially subverted democracy by promoting a false agenda. Obama ran as a mainstream candidate. He said, first of all, my personal background, his candidacy was based on his personal story because he hadn't done anything. My father's this goat herder from Kenya. I'm going to bring us all together. He said, I'm going to cut the deficit in half. I got him on tape. He said, marriage is between a man and a woman. I'm going to support Israel. So he never intended to do any of that. It was all a lie to hide the true radicalism. And that's how he got into office, on the lie. And look, his farewell speech, let's talk about that. He came up there, he said, look, I've been successful because he counted them off. He said, number one, I rebooted the American auto industry. Well, no, that's a lie. The American taxpayer took on the debt. He said, biggest stretch of job creation in history. Well, no, it's not 4% unemployment. It's about 20-25%. It's just that everybody left the workforce.
Right.
Then he said, I've opened a new chapter in Cuba. Well, no, you've propped up the communist dictators that you leftists have always worshipped for all these years. Next one, he said, the Iranian nuclear program, we've stopped the Iranian nuclear program without firing a shot. That's what he said. Well, no, that's a lie. In fact, the $1.7 billion in cash that went to the Iranians was shipped off to North Korea, where they're continuing the Iranian nuclear program for them. And then lastly, he said, of course, I put 20 million people on health care. Well, no, these are the people that were kicked off their health care. So everything about Obama's presidency is a lie and a fabrication. It's a fantasy, and it's based when you took a guy who lied about his agenda, lied about who he was. There's just no surprise that we get this complete fake presidency after all these years.
Yeah. Well, so how did he get elected? That's what. How did Trump get elected? That's what I would like to understand, because was it just they believed that he had no chance and they didn't take his threat seriously and let their guard down and effectively just paved the way for him to get elected? Is that what happened, Joel?
I think the public had been, for 8 years, the normal Americans, fly over land, or even in California and New York, just normal folks who go to work every day and believe in the country.
Used to go to work. Used to go to work every day.
Well,
right.
Used to, but
yeah.
people, just normal everyday Americans, had been just beat up and abused by this radical leftist. Every other day, he's calling us racists. Every other day, he's imposing new regulations and rules and making life very difficult, elevating illegal immigrants and criminals, giving away, messing up the healthcare system. Everyone lived through 8 years of insult after insult, telling us that Americans are no good and everything has to change and it has to be redone because it's so imperfect and so on. So people just got sick of the abuse, shutting down the Mount Rushmore because of his he disagreed with the budget cuts and so on. Every day there was something. So I think there was a grassroots movement, as we saw in the midterms, against Obama and the radicals, also an anti-establishment feeling as well. And I think Ted Cruz honestly built up this anti-establishment movement for several years, standing up to Obama finally, standing up to Obamacare. And he conditioned the electorate to wanting an anti-establishment candidate to, drain the swamp. When it came down to the election, Ted Cruz ran more as a mainstream candidate. He kind of wanted to be Jeb Bush in his campaign. He was very kind of safe and, his campaign slogan, courageous conservatives, reigniting the promise of America. So I think the public wanted Ted Cruz, but he kind of just presented himself more mainstream. So Donald Trump came along and said, okay, if you don't want to be Ted Cruz, I'll be Ted Cruz. And he became the anti-establishment candidate to fight back against the radical left.
Yeah, well, I think Ted Cruz was a fiction. He was a bit of a chimera, if you will. I just didn't buy into it. Once you really dug beneath the surface, his wife was managing director of Goldman, and he just wasn't who he claimed to be. and
I'll disagree. I'll disagree on that. I
he
think
wasn't trustworthy.
Ted Cruz is the real deal.
He wasn't trustworthy. Not a trustworthy guy.
Who?
Cruz was not a trustworthy guy, and I got this from people who know him in Texas, and I just felt, and a lot of people did, that he was part of the problem, and he kind of repudiated the establishment to run against them, and then the Glenn Beck thing. I think people just saw through him, but hey, it doesn't matter now because he's not part of it. So here we are. We've got Donald Trump. So what are you thinking is going to be the future, Joel?
Okay, quick comment. I did work with the Cruz campaign. Actually, did some of their videography and designed the campaign poster. And I did get to know Ted, and he really is the real deal. He's very trustworthy, constitutional warrior for liberty, cares deeply about the country. So I'll disagree with you on that.
We'll agree to disagree.
I think he would have been a wonderful, wonderful president. He's just one of the greatest, fighters for the Constitution and person that believes in America. So
we'll agree to disagree. We'll agree to disagree on that one.
Okay. As far as what I expect in the future, I think the future portends well when we saw who Trump appointed for all his cabinet posts. I think he has a very, very strong roster. A lot of guys from the Department of Defense, which are known to be not corrupted, like the CIA has been corrupted politically, and very strong cabinet choices. We know that Trump is a delegator. He's an MBA. He's a businessman, so he's not an ideologue. So expect him to simply tell the cabinet heads what his policies are and let them do their thing. So I think that portends well, that the future looks good when we see an MBA in office delegating authority to very talented cabinet members.
Hey, we've never had anybody in there like him before, have we?
It'll be a first look. George Bush was an MBA, but he had other issues. Trump is more of a doer, and I think he measures his own self-worth and success in whether he gets things done. So I think America is very capable of getting a lot done. It just requires the leadership to have that vision, and I think there's every chance to believe that that Trump has that vision.
Yeah, well, interesting about Trump, one thing we've been waiting for, I think, is somebody who actually fights, who will take on the virulent left and fight to the death. Hey, I think we've got that here, right?
I think, we certainly have someone who's going to call out the left, stand up to the left, not bow down and run every time political correctness shows its face. So I think there's all the things that we're looking for to deal with the radical left. I think Trump can stand up to them. There's always the chance and the concern that he may cave in as well. Don't forget, he's from New York. Most of his friends are leftists and Democrats, and he's been a Democrat most of his life, as well as his children were registered Democrats. They couldn't even vote for him in the primary. So there's always that concern among conservatives that somehow Trump might cave in or flip-flop. So that's something we're going to have to be wary of.
Well, certain things, I happen to have done some work for Trump quite a while ago. Certain things consistent on, like the lousy trade deals the country's been making for the past generation and a half, totally consistent on that. The crime, the bad government that we've been getting. I think he's been pretty consistent about that. And I think, having seen him speak, I think he's sincere about, making changes in the way the country does business. So we'll just have to see. Libertarian, he's not. So is it a question of just making better deals for the country, and hopefully that'll work out? Well, certainly that's a big part of the puzzle, and coming out against the globalists who've done a lot of harm here. But we have to see, don't we?
Yeah, well, I think that he does have some strengths like trade that he's espoused for many years, so I think we can be pretty confident about that. And look, there's a big ceremony on Friday, and we're going to see a lot of divisiveness. The Democrats, the radicals, people don't really understand how far left the Democrats have gone. Today, it really is a radical socialist party. It's no longer the Democrat Party. So instead of giving the president the honeymoon, usually they get 6 months to put their cabinet in place and get their policies rolling before there's any opposition. But we're looking at the Democrats trying to undermine President-elect from the beginning, starting with Barack Obama. He, blew the dog whistles. He, put in sanctions against Russia as if there's a definitive report that they actually somehow interfered with the election. The Hillary Clinton scandal was investigated for 2 years. The IRS scandal investigated for 2 years and nothing happened. Fast and Furious. These are investigations that went on forever and nothing ever came of them. All of a sudden, Obama, within 1 or 2 weeks, says, well, we've got the information and now we're going to do something about it. So Obama really signaled that let's make this guy look illegitimate with this nonsense about the, how the Russians hacked the election. In fact, somebody simply exposed Hillary Clinton's and the DNC's emails, which we were glad to see what they're really up to. And somebody, who knows who, tried to undermine Trump with this dossier about this nonsense going on in a Moscow hotel room. So who's to say who was trying to undermine whom? We don't know.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of argument to be made that these disclosures came either from within the DNC or, from within the intelligence community itself.
Right. There's every indication that the CIA has been corrupted over the years by Obama. Right. It's become a political organization, as has the Department of Justice. Trump is going to have to clean up these politicized entities that in themselves are manipulating the political process. We don't need to worry about a Russian hacker exposing Hillary's emails or Podesta's emails. We have to worry about our own intelligence service manipulating, or the DOJ manipulating politics. The IRS, using the IRS to go after conservative groups and prevent them from organizing in the 2012 election. That meant the 2012 election was not clean. It was manipulated by the IRS. So you have to look at Obama the last 4 years as not a legitimate president as well.
Yeah, well, if we start going down that road, we can go back to Watergate and, right? We could just, there's no end to it. I mean,
Well, if they're talking about outside interference, what about inside interference?
Yeah.
That delegitimized the election. And Obama's never done anything or held anybody accountable for that. So the hypocrisy of the Obama administration is just amazing. But they're trying to throw every landmine they can in the way of Trump, starting with activating their activists that, look, you need to protest this. And I think Obama is interested in a permanent protest.
Yeah.
He's a professional agitator. He was trained in Chicago as an agitator. The term community organizer was just kind of a nice word that the socialists used. The real word, the real job was community agitator. And in their own words, as I showed in my film, and I'm quoting, the job of the community organizer or agitator was to rub salt in the wounds of minorities and then use their discontent to take power. That's what they, in their literature. So it doesn't mean they want to help minorities. It means they want to use them to take power. So Obama was an agitator for 10, 12 years in Chicago, and I don't think he was ever interested in the presidency or in being president. That's why he just played golf and never went to his security briefings, went on vacations, put his feet up on the table. He just wanted to use the presidency to agitate and divide the country along racial lines, along class lines, and that's what I expect him to do, to go back to being that professional agitator. And he's laid the groundwork for it so far.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, he was effective at that, I guess. But so who was running the country the whole time? Was it Valerie Jarrett?
there's a leftist ideology, a radical ideology to harm America, to undermine our position at home and abroad, to divide the country. And once he sets those policies into place, he just has to show up every few weeks somewhere and say the top 1% are taking all your money. There's an evil boogeyman that's got all your money, and no matter how hard you work, you can't make any money because the boogeyman is getting richer and richer. Mm-hmm. Or there's still Jim Crow. There's still slavery. It's still with us. So that's all he had to do all these years, was just show up and give this kind of radical, agitating speech, lie about a policy from time to time about how great Obamacare is doing, or cover sometimes. The IRS, it's unacceptable that there's 4 people in Cincinnati that are targeting some conservative groups, and we'll get to the bottom of this. So he'll show up to cover or to give an agitating speech and go back to kind of playing golf or whatever else he's doing. But the radical policies, once he put them in place, he appointed a number of radicals like John Kerry and others, and he didn't really need to do much. Yeah.
Well, he certainly wasn't much of a manager or an administrator, just a real complete incompetent when you got down to it. I'm just surprised we got to the point where a Trump could actually be elected in the country after all the damage that he inflicted.
Well, it was close. I mean, look, but for 10,000 votes here and 20,000 votes there in a couple of swing states, we would now be facing life under the liberal fascist apocalypse, where every amendment starts to get undermined. They appoint radicals to the Supreme Court. They open the borders to illegals. I mean, Hillary was set to finish off the United States, and there'd be nothing left of the United States had she won. So, but for 0.5%, or 1% in Wisconsin, 0.5% in, 10,000 votes in Michigan, it would be a very different world. So let's hope that Trump can get us back to the core American values and constitutional republic that makes us so successful.
Yeah, well, he's definitely a fighter like no other fighter. Do you really believe that any other candidate could have beaten Hillary Clinton?
Absolutely. I believe Ted Cruz could have easily beaten Hillary. He's can take the argument, very well spoken. He had a massive base of core conservatives that would follow him. I think he did appeal a lot to actually the African Americans. Hispanic vote would have come his way. I think Cruz could have easily dispatched Hillary by a much wider margin than Trump. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I think the Cruz campaign was more mainstream, and he did not play to his base and to really who he was.
Yeah,
and that opened the door for Trump.
He might have had a shot, but I think I don't believe that anyone was going to fight the way that Trump did. And the branding, I mean, the master brander, he branded all of his adversaries early and often in the campaign, and few of them were able to recover from his branding and definitions. So anyway, but it's a question that we really can't answer at this point, Joel. So what work is next on your horizon here? Any more movies?
Well, a couple years ago, my last film was called "There's No Place Like Utopia."
Right,
which was kind of like a Michael Moore-style film where I ran around speaking to people in urban America, Chicago, Detroit, Newark, talked to a lot of African Americans that had been living under this Democrat hell for 50, 60 years in their cities, that Democrats controlled all the policies, and they all ended up with drug cultures, single motherhood, failing education systems, violence, crime, you name it. And all the jobs had been chased away, no businesses, unemployment. So I talked to people. It's amazing. Some of the biggest conservatives in America are actually black women. They don't want any part of this progressive nonsense. They didn't want illegals coming in and taking their jobs. They didn't want their kids smoking marijuana. They did not want any of this nonsense. And none of them want to be on welfare, by the way. There's a misunderstanding in the conservative world. People that are on welfare hate it. They're very embarrassed by it, and they prefer to have jobs for the most part. That was my experience. So you can see that film. It's There's No Place Like Utopia.com, and my personal website, joelgilbert.net. And all my films are on my film company website, Highway 61 ENT, ENT for entertainment.com.
Okay. And I'd love to see you do a movie chronicling what took place in this election, because I really think this election, putting aside the outcome of it, the way that social media got used by Trump, the way that relatively little money got expended, especially in the primary, the whole internet-based campaign, the way that the legacy media has been decimated, and they're still searching for footing here. All these things, Joel, this will go down as consequential and important an election as did Kennedy-Nixon, where television really became the great determiner of future presidents up until the internet. So I'd love to see you do something on that. Anyway, we wish you the best of luck. Just tell us your website again.
Go to obamasrealfather.com is the Dreams from My Real Father. There's no place like utopia.com, joelgilbert.net, and highway61ent.com.
All right, and we'll have a link to one or more of those sites on our site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Any questions, comments for Joel, myself on this show, or any others that we've done? Email kl@kerrylutz.com. That's kl@kerrylutz.com. And the Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. Twitter stream is @KerryLutz. Joel, we will talk to you again. Wish you the best of luck. Thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for all the work you did during this election and before exposing the real people in power in the country. So we wish you the best.
Great. Thank you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Where he acted as a Soviet agent for the Russians. Obama admits that Davis raised him, and in my research I showed not only is Davis the biological father, but became the ideological mentor and radicalized Obama into this anti-white, anti-American communist worldview, such that when Obama went to Occidental, he wrote in his own book, he said, when I was 18, I went to Occidental to study with the Marxist professors. Now, who goes to an exclusive prep school in Hawaii and wants to study Marxism? This is because of the radicalization. So Obama followed in the footsteps of his real father back to Chicago, where his father came from, and became a front man for the radical social...
Who he really was, his parents, whatever. I mean, he was a manufactured candidate. The Obama that we would see on TV, in the commercials, all that stuff, just like the Bush before him and the Clinton before him and the Bush 43 HW, they weren't real people. They're creations of the media. They don't exist. They don't have a separate corporeal existence as this character. They're strictly, like Shakespeare says, we're all characters on the stage of life. Well, these were real manufactured characters, unlike Donald Trump, who is himself before the election and now, right? I mean, these people don't exist.
Let me comment. Look, I think Barack Obama has a very strong identity. It's just that he hid it from the public with the help of all the media and the people that didn't want people to know his true agenda. And in my film Dreams from My Real Father a couple of years ago, I created an entire alternate biography kind of based on his book, a takeoff on his book Dreams from My Father. And I showed that Obama's real biological father was not the Kenyan Obama, but was in fact Frank Marshall Davis, the Communist Party member, one of the original black Bolsheviks out of Chicago, who went to Hawaii on orders of the Kremlin.
The soon-to-be departed Barack Obama and his abuses as president, extra-constitutional activities that he undertook, who he really was one person who is at the forefront of all of that is director, filmmaker Joel Gilbert. Joel was on the show before. Joel, you really made some solid contributions, so we welcome you back to the show.
Hey, great to be here again. Thank you.
Hey, so dreams from my real father. We could go on and on. Obama was an enigma. I don't believe anything about him. I mean, the whole thing is who.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is January 17th, 2017. Inauguration 3 days away. 3 quick days. Well, if you watched the lead up to the election, people speaking up against